Is Gunung Padang an Ice Age pyramid? We're here to find out. This is Archaeology with Flint Dibble. I'm an archaeologist, and this is the second in my series of public peer reviews. We are going to be peer reviewing the article Geoarchaeological Prospecting of Gunung Padang, Buried Prehistoric Pyramid in West Java, Indonesia, published in November of last year in the journal Archaeological Prospection by Danny Hilman Natawidjaja and many other co authors. I'm joined by Dr. Lutfi Yondri and Harry Sofian, two archaeologists who work with Indonesia's National Research and Innovation Center. They have experience with prehistoric contexts across Indonesia. Now, you might have heard of Gunung Padang. It's been in the media and the news quite a bit, actually, in the last couple of years. It's featured on shows like Ancient Aliens and Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, and it's been in the media in particular once this article came out. It's an interesting case. There was an outcry among archaeologists, me included, on social media when this article came out. And for example, I was contacted by Nature News and by The Guardian to give quotes on why I see problems with this paper. I'll give you a hint. I don't really think that this is an Ice Age pyramid. The paper itself presented a lot of evidence, including cores with which they gathered carbon for radiocarbon dating. As well, they did a range of useful prospecting techniques, including ground penetrating radar, electroresistivity, and seismic tomography. All of these are very useful for looking underground. However, if you look at some of the figures that they produce, they're not the clearest for always understanding architecture, especially in this kind of terrain. And so that's something we go into, in addition to the fact that the dates are probably problematic, the way that they did not take dates from excavation context, but rather with a core that is going tens of meters down. So 30 feet, 40 feet. As you can see, I think that there's some issues throughout. They did dive in depth, but there's many significant problems with how they interpret the chronology, their definitions of whether this is a pyramid or not, as well as a whole range of other little things and big things like where are the artifacts, the archaeological artifacts from this project. Since I am familiar with archaeological science and I'm familiar with archaeological publication, however, as a zooarchaeologist who focuses on the Mediterranean, I am not familiar with the Indonesian world. So I'm very honored to be joined by Dr. Lutfi Yondri. If you could please give a quick introduction to yourself. Thank you.
I'm Lutfi Yondri. I'm archaeologist in Indonesia. I'm a principal resources in Indonesian Innovation Agency. I go to Gunung Padang since as a student at archaeology student in Indonesian University and try to research in Gunung Padang since 1997. And I was done some excavation about Gunung Padang site. I want to know about the structure of Gunung Padang, how about the chronology, how do the people do to build at Gunung Padang a long time ago in the prehistoric era. After I know about Gunung Padang from my research and as my dissertation in a doctoral program in Pajajaran University.
Thank you so much, Luffy. It's a real honor to have you here. You've done excavations at the site. You've published a book on the site. There's nobody with more expertise on the site of Gunung Padang and the archaeology of the site than you. So it's a real honor to have you here. Thank you so much. In addition to Dr. Lutfi Yondri, I'm also joined by Harry Sofian, a PhD student at the University of Nanterre in Paris. He has also published significantly on several different prehistoric archaeological topics in Indonesia. So thank you for joining us, Harry.
My name is Harry Sofian. I'm now as a student in the Nanterre University as a PhD student and also working in the National Research and Innovation Agency in Indonesia. I'm the archaeologist and I'm finished my undergraduate in the archaeology in the UGM or Gajah Mada University, and I continue to France to continue to study archaeometallurgy in the Paris, and now I'm also study about the archaeometallurgy in Indonesia and the Southeast Asia. But my work is mostly in the Indonesia and I'm working from the prehistory. I'm only focused in the metals on ancient metals. Thank you.
Between the two of you, you've published many dozen articles on a variety of different archaeological topics throughout Indonesia. And that's really important because, unlike me, you have a sense of the context of these finds, you understand what's going on locally. So our goal for reviewing this paper is complicated. In many ways, what we're really trying to do is review the conclusion of the paper. Is it justified from the evidence that's presented? But the interpretation, on the other hand, is where things get questionable. So the conclusion starts with a section titled, Gunung Padang is a multi-layered prehistoric pyramid. This study strongly suggests that Gunung Padang is not a natural hill, but a pyramid-like construction. The pyramid's core consists of meticulously sculpted massive andesite lava enveloped by layers of rock constructions. The carbon dating analysis further supports the multi-layer construction's long history spanning successive periods. So that's really the core of what we're trying to review here. And in many ways, I have to say, as an archaeological scientist, the conclusion surprises me, because nowhere in the article is there a discussion of meticulously sculpted andesite. It's not mentioned anywhere except for the conclusion, so there's no way to interrogate that except to say they've clearly not proven it. Another big sort of red flag to me is the use of the word pyramid here, a pyramid-like construction. And it's kind of interesting. Where do they really get this from? What do you two think about this contention that Gunung Padang is a pyramid?
Gunung Padang is not a pyramid. Gunung Padang is a stone terrace. It's a specific culture in megalithic culture in the world. We know upright stone. We know about dormant, and Gunung Padang is stone terrace, not a pyramid. Gunung Padang also in Indonesia. Indonesia didn't know about, not yet find about a pyramid, and also Indonesian culture didn't have pyramid culture. Also about a statement about pyramid buried at the mountain. No episode, no era in Indonesian culture had a pyramid buried in the mountains.
Pyramids are mentioned a few times, mostly other pyramids, in the article. But on a few different pages, the authors mention the pyramidal shape, as it's referred to in page 18, where the electroresistivity reveals the pyramidal shape of layers A and B. Or the seismic tomography, which reveals a cross-sectional view of the pyramid mound. What is a pyramid mound? Or on page 22, Unit 2 corresponds to a buried pyramidal-shaped layer. But a pyramidal-shaped layer is not really a pyramid as far as I understand.
I just want to make sure here about the terminology of the using word of the pyramid. What is terminology of the pyramids? I found in the Britannica.com in here, and the others, the pyramid shape is the three-dimension shape.
Yeah.
Is the pyramid has a polygonal base and flat triangular face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is join a common point called the apex. As the archaeologists, I'm better to say it's not the pyramid, but it's the terrace hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, stone terrace in archaeology in prehistoric culture.
Exactly. I mean, everywhere in the world, that is what you'd call it. Not just in Indonesia, but everywhere in the world where people are building terraces into hill slopes, that is what you would call it. And it's very common. I mean, this contention about whether it's a terraced hill or a pyramid is kind of funny in light of Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse. It might surprise some of you to know that Graham Hancock is mentioned in the acknowledgments of the paper itself. He was a consultant for the research team. And while the paper doesn't provide a definition of the pyramid, he does. If you go to Ancient Apocalypse episode 1, Graham Hancock says, there's a question of definitions here. How do we define a pyramid? I'm sorry, I can't do his British accent. But how do we define a pyramid? If we define it as a structure that rises in a series of terraces to a summit, then perhaps we can best describe Gunung Padang as a step pyramid. Paraphrasing a second. And so this is kind of, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. If terraces are a pyramid, well then this is a pyramid. But of course this looks nothing like actual step pyramid that archaeologists have investigated from Egypt or Mesoamerica. And these are monuments that are constructed upwards in a series of levels and not sort of a hill slope, right? And so it's absolutely nothing the same. And I have to say that this definition that he gives of a structure that rises in a series of terraces to a summit, I mean, that is most large human settlements on a hill. There are many terrace settlements that rise to a peak, to a summit, if you will, and they're constructed as a series of terraces into a slope to stop erosion. I've excavated at several. For example, on the island of Crete, I've worked for the last 10 years on a project at Azoria, an ancient Greek city there on the island of Crete. And so you can see here that it is constructed as a series of terraces that rise to a summit, but it is definitely not a pyramid. And so even this definition is fairly ludicrous. We cannot all of a sudden define pyramids as any terrace settlement or monument. It doesn't work. That's not a good definition, if you see what I mean.
Based on the Hilman article, we can see the difference about a step pyramid also with stone terrace of Gunung Padang. Gunung Padang site as a structure from prehistoric era. Gunung Padang structure is not a step pyramid. Is a stone terrace. It's made built from stone block. Very different with a pyramid. Also with a step pyramid. Gunung Padang site is not a step pyramid. It is a stone terrace.
It doesn't demonstrate any sculpting. For example, it doesn't it doesn't show that in any way, and they don't discuss sculpting, for example, in the article itself. And so this kind of perspection is very useful, but it's not presented in a way that an archaeologist would present material culture or a monument. Is that correct?
We can see, and in archaeology, we have two methods to make a difference from our source when the people from the past build some structures. We know cultural transformation and natural transformations. The columnar joint stone block in Gunung Padang Mountain is a natural source. We can see it's a kind of natural transformation from the source of about stone block before.
Yeah, because these stones are very natural. And then some of them are used to create the monument that's visible on the site. Another thing I noticed is these images are very interesting. They have question marks sometimes on them. They show this layer of stones going down the slope in yellow. And then they show their trench. To the right of the trench, they created this step, like it's a step pyramid, right? And they put a question mark there. To me, that step seems totally invented. There's no trench there. The trench is meters upslope. They just created a step and put a question mark in there because they have no evidence of this step, I mean. It's not in their trench. Another example, in the electroresistivity, I think it's lower resistivity. It's in green, and they say tunnel, question mark. Again, that question mark is doing a lot of work because there's other reasons there could be a signal of low resistivity other than a tunnel. They make it clear that this is part of a volcano, right? Early on, it's very clearly described. It's located within Neopliocene volcanic rocks, right? And they talk about how Mount Gunung Padang is surrounded by pyroclastic and epiclastic volcanic rocks with low resistivity values. So these volcanic rocks, the way they form, they have variable measurements within their resistivity, within their seismic tomography. So it would make sense that at the site itself, you're going to have anomalies that would be natural because it's part of a lava tube. It's part of a larger volcano. And so I was wondering if you guys thought about that at all, because I could see that the GPR and the resistivity data is useful.
I read the ART. What is the ART in here? For the ART is is used for the geologic to find the groundwater of the contamination and the fracture of zone
within that entire region around Gunung Padang. Even what they say in their own article, it talks about the variability in these kind of values that exist naturally in the region. And so to jump immediately that this is a archaeological explanation to a tunnel question mark seems to me to be an optimistic interpretation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lutfi.
I think it's coming. The color is represented about hydrolysis of British Gunung Padang. Until now, with Flynn coming to Gunung Padang, Flynn can see the side of Gunung Padang still have a well, and the water still flow.
Nice.
The Gunung Padang. It's coming from hydrolysis process in beneath Gunung Padang. It's not a room, not artificial room. It's a kind of hydrolysis process beneath Gunung Padang.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different problems with this study when you look at it closely. One of the big ones is the dates that they provide. This pyramid, is 24,000 years old. And how they get at that is kind of surprising. It's not in any way that an archaeologist would provide a date for a constructed monument. They place a cores, you can see on this plan that they provide, sort of around the monument. That's where they drill a core down deep, 10 meters, 20 meters, so down 50, 60 feet into the soil. And it's a fairly narrow core. And then they pull up sediment, and in there they find carbon, and they provide a series of dates. And I mean, as I told Robin McKee of The Observer, if you went to the Palace of Westminster and dropped a core 7 meters into the ground and pulled up a soil sample, you might date it as being 40,000 years old. But that does not mean the Palace of Westminster was built 40,000 years ago by ancient humans. It just means there's carbon, organic material, down that deep that is 40,000 years old. It's extraordinary that this paper has been published. I think that this is what a lot of the outcry in the archaeological community online has been about, is these dates that don't have any real context. Do you have anything to add to this, Lutfi, about the dates?
Also critic about dates. In archaeology, if we try to analyze about chronology, we try to find some sample. In archaeology, sample must have a matrix, must have a provenance, must have associations with the data we try to find the chronology, also have a context.
Yeah.
Okay. Four criteria as a sample in archaeology, but Hilman analysis about chronology, he tried to find some material from coring. That didn't find any matrix. I didn't know about matrix, about association, about provenance, and also context.
Harry, do you want to expand on any of these points or bring up a different point of view of your thoughts on this article?
I will criticism about the author first.
Okay.
If you see the authors is there is a Danny Hilman, and the others is you can see only one, the archaeologist.
Who is the archaeologist? The one archaeologist?
Archaeologist is the
Ali
only
Akbar.
the Ali Akbar.
Okay.
Ali Akbar. So it's
And everyone else
only
is,
Ali Akbar.
yeah.
11 is the geologist. All the geography and the geologist. It's not the archaeologist. But why this article should put it in the as the geoarchaeological prospecting. So it's not make sense for me. So it's not the archaeological word. If you see the word, I've tried to find the word of the artifact. If they say the civilization in here, so I only find the 2 words of the artifact from the all of the 25 page. Oh my God! If you want to tell about the archaeological work, you should mention many artifacts, or should be mentioned all the archaeological, like an excavation and the artifact, ecofact, and everything. So artifact is very important for the archaeology.
I tend to think that context is the base, but how we define these contexts is based off of things like artifacts and ecofacts. And as Harry mentions, every site I've ever worked at, and I've worked at a lot of different sites, has thousands of artifacts and ecofacts, bones, stones, or potsherds, or whatever. Here in these layers that are dated so early, there's nothing except for this one knife, Kujang stone. And I know that you study metals. You study metals, and so is there comparison to a Kujang dagger in any way justified?
There is no explanation of the Kujang stone in the article.
I know.
Only mentioned in the photo. Only that one Kujang stone. There is no. That's all.
Wait. They have one sentence. They say, on top of this buried, decayed rock mass, a unique stone artifact resembling a traditional Sundanese dagger called Kujang stone was discovered. That is all they say. Is that how you identify artifacts?
Kujang stone is we don't know about the history of the Kujang because it's very later. I'm studying the archaeometallurgy. This artifact is for what?
Quick question though. I mean, so the Kujang daggers that are found in Indonesia, they date much, much later, right? To the first millennium CE, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't look anything like that stone. Do you see any similarities between them when you compare? They don't even resemble a Kujang dagger. So it's again an issue, just like with pyramids, of definitions. They try to say this resembles a pyramid. It doesn't. They try to say it resembles a Kujang dagger, and it doesn't. And they provide no definition through which to base those conclusions and those terms. They're used to draw a crowd, to get an audience, if anything.
I just want to criticize about the metals they found in the 2014. There is a metals
You mean
they
the
found, and they
amulets?
claim yes, the amulets. You know, they already analyze it in the metallurgy lab in the Indonesian university. There is a result of the cuprum or Cu
Uh-huh.
or copper is
Mhm.
92%, and the lead
Ferrum.
is the
Mhm.
3%, and ferrum or iron is 1.9%. So if you see only metal they found is they claim is from the 5,200 years
5,200
BC. So
before. Yeah.
so it's a very old for me. Even for the in the Southeast Asia, because if you know in the Southeast Asia, the oldest one they found for the metals in the mainland is the only 2000 BC,
Mhm.
and for the bronze and for the irons is 1500 years ago. So it will be changed everything, you know, it's will be changed everything in the Southeast Asia if we talk about the metals, but unfortunately this is on the only the only metals artifact they found it. They claim is from the 11
The metals
meters,
are from
so
the
it's
ones.
very deep actually.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Hmm.
11 meters. Yeah.
for me, it's quite strange because they didn't mention anything in the article about these amulets.
Mhm.
They didn't mention anything.
I wonder if
So
it's
what?
because they've been on the internet. People realized it looked exactly like a 20th century, early 20th century coin.
Yes, yes, yes. You're right. Actually, so there is a disturb of this is from this side. Actually, to say about the civilization in the Gunung Padang as the oldest civilization for me is not make sense at all because we only found very few of the artifact. Yeah, for my research is for the metals. We know is metals is coming quite late in Indonesia, so it's the dating from the 5,200 years ago is not make sense for me
Mhm.
at all. Even for the Southeast Asia archaeologists and for the archaeometallurgists who working in the Southeast Asia, even for the Indonesian, we don't have the any primary production of the metals. So we not yet found the primary production, even for the for the metals. If you put Gunung Padang as the oldest civilization as the for the finding of metals, is yeah,
Question mark.
it makes sense at all. This will be differs the chronology. It's really broken the chronology of the Southeast Asia archaeology. The publication of
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
Gunung Padang. Danny and the others is never involved archaeologists, the other archaeologists, except the Ali Akbar, yeah.
Yeah.
Only Ali Akbar.
And
And
Yeah.
we never talk in the debate or discussion.
yeah, so they never
You
got
see.
in touch with you guys to ask about your thoughts.
So why? Yeah, yeah. I don't know why he want to enter the archaeology in here, but for me his background is the geologist as the seismic, yeah, seismic, and
Yeah,
for the air.
Mhm.
doesn't
So
Yeah.
doesn't isn't he primarily a modern disaster geologist?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's what
yes.
I thought. What would you say is the date for Gunung Padang? I think you published in this
Yeah. Yeah.
article that it was the second and first century BCE is what I thought you said.
Yeah. From I have excavation and many books of excavation at Gunung Padang. I try to excavate terrace wall. I try to find the old layer when the surface when Gunung Padang built in the past. I found charcoal from terrace 1, terrace 2, terrace 3, 7. The charcoal have a context. The charcoal have a matrix. The charcoal have associations also provenience and related with a Gunung Padang structure. And then I send it to laboratory. Laboratorium dating. I get the dating of Gunung Padang structure as a culture, coming from 117 years before century until 45 before century is boil 3 generation.
And you discovered more than just charcoal. You have artifacts and things like that too. Animal bones. Yeah. What kind of artifacts did you excavate?
I found a pottery, stone mortar. I found the same association, the same provenience as the same matrix with the charcoal.
You have more than one. You have several dozen or 100 artifacts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah.
See, that's real archaeology. Exactly. You excavate right next to the structure you're trying to understand. You find material that relates to people's lives at that time, and then you date it. And because of the way the sediment is next to the wall, you can see the date of the construction of the wall. So yeah, thank you.
Danny Hilman and Ali Akbar, they published a book to support their argument about the Gunung Padang as the oldest pyramid. Ali Akbar is published a book about the situs Gunung Padang and mystery dan archaeology. Danny Hilman also published a book about the Plateau Never Lied. If we read this book, actually, Plateau Never Lied, Atlantis is Indonesia. It's actually a support of the theory of the Atlantis is in Indonesia. They want to have the glorification of the civilization located in Indonesia during the Ice Age. So they try to find what is the similar of the what is Plato said.
As someone who studies ancient Greece and who has read plenty of Plato in ancient Greek, I can tell you that Plato lies all the time. He actually, in the Republic, specifically talks about how lying can be good for society. There's a just lie. So to argue that Plato never lies is like saying, well, go read some more of Plato where he tells you that he lies and that it's good for things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but given that Hilman Natawidjaja published a book on Plato's not lying Atlantis in Southeast Asia, he seems to have approached this with a conclusion in mind in advance. And so you can see this with the example of that coin. You can see this where they want it to be really, really old without actually it just being old, right? And so they want it to be, and they present it as very old, but then all the studies show that it's not. And same thing with pyramid. They want it to be a pyramid, but they don't actually justify the term pyramid. And they want the monument to be very old, so they take a core and they use radiocarbon date from the lowest point, and it's like, you've not demonstrated that people were there at that time. That's just organic carbon.
In Indonesia, denied of the oldest pyramid. So I think it's only Ali Akbar who support him for this one.
He's the only one. There's only one that supports
the only
him.
one.
I think,
Wow.
because I don't find any person, because as I've told you before, we never have discussion about the Gunung Padang with Danny Hilman for the archaeologists and the geologists. We have the contradict point of view for this one.
Which is surprising. I mean, Lutfi, you've excavated there, and he's never approached you asking for your thoughts on this. It's just, to me, if I had run an excavation and somebody came to the site afterwards and did research, I would expect some level of collaboration and collegiality. To hear that there's not any, he doesn't come to you as an expert of the site, is surprising.
Yeah, not only you, me too. I'm quite surprised because
it's very strange to me. I mean, no other places in the world, usually you work closely with people that have excavated there previously. So this spreads kind of a wrong way of thinking about the field locally. It's problematic. What about you, Harry? Do you have any thoughts on the politics or the publicity of this project?
This research is based actually from the initiation of the Andi Arif,
Mhm.
the president staff of the social and the disaster from our former president Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono.
Mhm.
So it's actually is this research based on the catastrophic of the geology,
Mhm.
because the Gunung Padang is the base near the geological fault. But
Yeah, that's
I
right.
don't know what happened with this research. Why they connected with the archaeology? Because to support the book of the Atlantis, the lost continent finally found from the Arya Santos. This research to reveal the Indonesian is the center of the ancient civilization in the world is successful actually to get the attention of the people from the around all the world.
Yeah.
But what they use to get the attention is not the right hand for
It's
me.
not. It's
It's
not
not
honest evidence.
because they using the what is the archaeology to support the glorification. And for me, based on the archaeological remains, is the Gunung Padang is not very old. As I support the Lutfi Yondri research for the Gunung Padang. Yes, Gunung Padang is the archaeological site, but it's not very old. So it's not the center of the civilization.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
I
it's
know.
like an other.
it's an extremely impressive monument, but it doesn't date to 20,000 years ago. It dates to 2,000 years ago, and
Exactly,
so
exactly.
Yeah, attention from Indonesian government to Gunung Padang. Now, since 2023, we try to set how to set Gunung Padang as a cultural tourism, because many information was presented by some archaeologists, also some geologists about Gunung Padang informations formation, also for about Gunung Padang as archaic volcano, and after that, the people from prehistoric era coming to Gunung Padang and build stone structure, stone terrace at Gunung Padang. It's a complete information to show to present to as a cultural tourism. Now, because Gunung Padang have a limited area, we, uh,
mhm.
we, we must set many tourism when he come to Gunung Padang. How the visitor coming to Gunung Padang have many knowledge about Gunung Padang before, because Gunung Padang is very interesting to do as a cultural studies. I think the research about geologies about geological aspect in Gunung Padang is finished, not yet problematic. Uh, and now we try to continue how to uh, conserve about Gunung Padang as a cultural heritage, and useful for our generation, not only in Indonesia, also in our in the world. I think because the visitors coming to Gunung Padang not only from Indonesia,
Of
only
course.
from several nations coming to Gunung Padang. I hope Flynn they will coming to Gunung Padang next year, next time we can try
I
to
would love
discuss
to
it.
come. Yeah.
Okay.
Harry, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, for me, Danny Hilman invite the speakers for introduce the Gunung Padang as an ancient pyramid, such as Andre Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Andre Collins. His his book about the Gobekli Tepe, the Genesis of the Gods, is the and the Graham Hancock too,
Mm-hmm.
is a circle of the pseudo science for me. So
Yeah.
it's not the his circle is not the archaeologists, because we live in the digital era right now. I'm very glad to inform, because we should talk to the people, especially non-archaeologists and non-geologists, because
Mm-hmm.
the ordinary people or the peoples in the outside, they waiting our research, and they waiting what we said, because they always believe what we said. The archaeologists said, we said is the civilization, okay, is civilization, it's like that. because we are the researcher, we are the archaeologists. So we should tell they the truth, what we are doing. Pa Lutfi can be as a counterattack for this journal to publish the
I hope
journal
so.
to read this one, because I'm very like to discussion between two experts and discussion in the right place in the journal, because in the journal we can have the argument. I'm very glad you educated our people about the archaeology, what they want to see about the history, and with this conversation, hope the people or can know, right, what the argumentation of the geologist said is the all this pyramid is not true at all.
Yeah. In my mind, until now, the archaeology science still stands in Indonesian people.
Mhm.
If somebody says about culture in the past, the people Indonesia, the society in Indonesia still try to receive about the glorifications, not by data. Until now, I still use my social media, try to explain about archaeology, also related about Gunung Padang issue. How about archaeologists do in the research, how the archaeologists explain about the data based some kind of analysis, and still until now, I agree with Hari Sofian. Uh, we must make us one article to complain about this article. This article published not by archaeological data. Uh, we must say about Gunung Padang, how about the archaeology data, and how about analogy about culture in Gunung Padang with Indonesian culture, also in the culture in the world. Is it true or false?
I think the three of us, if we were peer reviewers for this article, we would have all said reject.
If the journal try to analyze about the article, he must join with Indonesian reviewer.
I had a few journalists get in touch with me, and I told them, a lot of the geology in the article is okay. Not all of it, because they have those question marks and the Kujang stone and stuff like that mixed in. But
Yeah.
much of the geology is okay, but the conclusion does not match the geology. There's no definition of a pyramid. There's no evidence of human stuff in 25,000 years ago. And so, yeah, that's why I would reject it, or at least say major revisions. You have to rewrite the conclusion completely because you've not proven it. So yeah, that's kind of my conclusion. And I wish you both the best of luck. If there's anything I can do to help you, get in touch with the editors of the journal. I don't know them, but we can get them in touch with you. I did see in the media that they are reviewing the publication because of the media that it's gotten, the negative media. So if you want, I can try to introduce you to them, either to write a counter article or to make a statement to them about the problems with it. And I also wish you luck, because I mean, this will go on YouTube. And I, for one, get insulted when I gave my quotes to Nature for that article. Both you and me were quoted in it, Lutfi. In that Nature article, I had an attack on me from the political press of journalist Kay Smythe, who follows Graham Hancock and likes to write about these lost civilizations. What she said, she quoted Hilman Natawidjaja saying, "This object's regular geometry and distinct composition and its materials unrelated to the surrounding rocks signify its man-made origin." The study's co-author Hilman Natawidjaja noted, "Countering Dibble's seemingly redundant, borderline repetitive word vomit."
Danny Hilman, he say you are kurcaci in English is Little Mermaid.
All right, sorry. So Danny Hilman called me a little mermaid.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of way this stuff gets covered in the press, is aggressive attacks on those of us who are experts and understand the context and the data involved. And it's sometimes annoying and depressing, but I think it's worthwhile for us all to speak up for the truth in today's world, even if it's not always easy. So I really want to thank you for coming here and speaking truth and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. So thank you so much. Yeah.
My last word actually, my last words is we should have the collaboration to writing in the journal, that journal actually, the journal who published this article. We should fix this misunderstood about the Gunung Padang and the prehistory of the Indonesia. If we didn't put back this one, make a citation of this article should be 25,000 years ago is quite old, very old for me. This one,
Of
yeah.
course. Yeah.
I agree with Hari Sofian. We must try to write what is the really fake about Gunung Padang as a human culture in the past. Archaeology do based by data, not by opinion.
Okay.
Thank you, Prince.
Fantastic. Thank you, both of you, so much. That was absolutely fantastic and enlightening. I mean, to be honest, I never would have imagined that this team went to the site and did not talk with archaeologists who have worked there. And to be frank, I'd never known that so much excavation, scientific modern excavation, had happened at the site under Lutfi. And so that was, it's very eye-opening to see what's happened in a local sense and hear it from them, and for us to understand what's going on, since this site has been in the news just so much and it's at the center of these controversies around kind of Atlantis hunting and this fake archaeology that seems to be going on. And I think it also really brings up an important point about these kind of new methods, GPR, ERT, ST, fancy nice terms, right? And when you look at the results that the team provides, they're actually really interesting results. As we've heard, I didn't even think that they could have a hydrological interpretation. So when Lutfi and Harry brought that up, it's sort of like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? They know the context, of course, on the ground. But it produces these blurry sort of results that you can almost see anything. And so it's like one of those Rorschach? It's one of those Rorschach tests, right? You look at this sort of blurry results and what do you see? And you can make it look like a lot of things that it's not if you don't know the context and you don't think to look at it. And then lastly, same thing with these cores and the use of the word pyramid. It's so over the top. I'm really, I will do my best to put Lutfi and Harry in touch with the editors at Archaeological Perspection and make sure that a reply based on real archaeology can be published. And remember, as Lutfi said very, very wisely, archaeology is data, not opinion. It's based in facts, interpreted by experts who understand context, the materials, the methods, etc. So thank you for tuning in. This has been another peer review on Archaeology with Flint Dibble.